You're listening to Hoedown History, where we explore the history and legends of America's old time and bluegrass tunes. This is one of the first tunes I learned to play on banjo, and it's one of those super happy sounding ones that, well, if you're playing it on banjo, you kind of use these big full chords which go and then change abruptly and then take a quick turn at high speed, kind of like a rabbit on the loose, or in this case, well, a hare. Well, folks, this tune has been around for a while, and it has an interesting story. In this video, we'll discuss some of the history behind the song and some of the legends behind the name. I'll share with you a story behind the first recording we have of the tune. Now, the first recording is about 100 years old, but the origin of this song looks to be way older. So stick to the end, because it looks like this one too has roots in the British Isles. And I'll play a cut from this older version that many musicologists pretty much affirm is the origin of Old Molly Hare that we all know and love. I know I got goosebumps when I first discovered and listened to this older tune. You'll have to hear it for yourself. It's super cool.
Old Granny Hare, what you doing there? Running through the cotton patch as hard as I can tear. Wheat bread, cornbread, or any such a thing. The old cow died with the measles in the spring.
Now, some music historians believe this tune to have been a minstrel piece that went into oral tradition among both blacks and whites during the 1800s. And various ditties or rhymes have been sung to it, including these floating verses.
Old Molly Hare, what you doing there? Going cause cotton patch hard as I can tear. Old Molly Hare, what you doing there? Sitting in the fireplace, smoking cigar. Old Molly Hare, what you doing?
Since I've only played this song at my local jams as an instrumental, I didn't even know there were lyrics to the tune until I started digging through some of the old recordings. And they're all kind of hilarious. Now, the earliest documented reference to one of the song lyrics I could dig up is from a book printed way back in 1881 entitled Uncle Remus, His Songs and His Sayings, the Folklore of the Old Plantation. Here we find the stanza about Old Molly Hare smoking a cigar.
Hare, what you doing there? Sitting in the corner, smoking a cigar. Wheat bread, cornbread, or any such a thing. The old cow died with the measles in the spring.
It appears that some of the lyrics to Old Molly Hare were combined with lyrics to another folk song, Mr. Rabbit, which suggests that originally the song may have been concerned with the familiar Brer Rabbit trickster figure from African American folk tales. Now, while I was able to dig up the first recording of this tune, I wasn't able to get the rights to it for this video, so I'll post a link in the description below. But the story of the first recording starts with this man, James Cowan Powers, better known as Fiddlin Powers. Born in 1877 in Southwest Virginia. Now, we don't know much about his early childhood, but at some point his older brother, who was known around the area as a great dancer, bought a fiddle sometime in 1887 when Cowan was 10 years old. Being not much of a fiddler, the older brother soon lost interest in his new purchase, but young Cowan took a liking to it and would wait for his brother to leave the house before sneaking into his room and taking the fiddle out of the case to practice it privately. And one of the first tunes he learned? Yep, Old Molly Hare. Now, when Powers was around 23, he married one Matilda Lambert, who also happened to be from a very musical family. Together, the two would go on to have 4 kids. Now, as was common of the day, Powers would work a variety of jobs, including making leggings, building rafters for houses, and even leather gun holsters. I guess underarm holsters were big at the time because, according to one researcher, he made one for every young man in the area. Tragedy hit in 1916 when Matilda died of tuberculosis at the age of 35, leaving Powers a widower with 4 kids to raise on his own. Now, being from a musical lineage, the kids all had been given different instruments at a young age, and they played music around the house. So at some point, Powers decided to form a family band. He himself was a prominent fiddler by this time, winning numerous fiddling contests and performing throughout the area. Eventually, this family band would go on and perform throughout Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and North Carolina. And in 1924, an event occurred that would have a profound effect on the band. In the spring of that year, there was a huge fiddler convention in Johnson City, Tennessee, and Among other people competing at the fiddler competition would be Charles Bowman and Uncle Am Stewart, Diedrich Harris. Now, after all the fiddlers performed their numbers, Bowman stepped up to Cowan and said, quote, "Mr. Powers, the way I see it, one of us will get first and the other second." And he would be right. Powers took the $50 gold piece, and Bowman got second. But even more importantly, a certain local businessman took notice of Powers and landed him a recording contract with some record labels in 1924 and in 1925. And it was at one recording session at the Zinzendorf Hotel in Winston-Salem on September 27th for the OK label that the very first recording of Old Molly Hare was made. I'll provide a link to this recording below, and it's worth a listen, not least because of Powers' spoken intro where he shares his theory on the origin of the tune. Now, this would be the last album the Powers family band recorded, as the kids would start to grow up and go their own separate ways. But Cowan would continue to perform on radio and at local fiddlers contests, and even had a couple of stints with the Stanley Brothers in the 50s. And thanks to him and his family band, we still have this legendary piece of old-time music history that we can all enjoy today. There are two main theories about how Old Molly Hare gets its name. One is the one I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the video. Since the tune's melody does seem to kind of run and turn and change chords pretty abruptly, it does seem to imitate the running of a rabbit or a hare. The second theory sounds a bit more like a tall tale, but it's worth sharing. This one comes from a man who had been a noted caller of old-time dances when he was younger, sometime around the 1870s or 1880s. According to him, the settlers of the Missouri-Kansas prairie region were plagued by rodent holes, especially rabbits, which were a hazard to cattle or horses that would trip up in them. However, some of those holes did have one important benefit. The holes could be used for fence posts, saving the homesteader the hard labor of digging another hole to put in their posts. Anyone who has used a postal hole digger will understand this one. Now, usually the settlers of the time took great pride and great pains to set their posts all in a straight line. And this story starts with a man named John. You see, when this John built his fence, he wasn't so concerned about it being in a straight line. He simply looked down at the random rabbit holes in his field and then just set his posts in them. All he had to do was string the wire, and rather quickly he had his fencing done in a record time. But the result was even more erratic than he anticipated. One day he was looking over his completed fence work when several neighbors came riding up. They took one look at the fence and then had their usual laugh to poor old John's embarrassment. "John," said one, "how much liquor does it take to build a fence like that?" "Well," said John, scratching his head, "I hadn't calculated for it to be a worm fence." And they had their laugh at old John and added, "Well, John, anyhow, you certainly did get your fence up pretty quick. Did you have any help?" And John responded, "Well, yes and no. I sort of took advantage of Mother Nature on the part of the work. You see, me and the mules had to set the posts and string the wire, but Old Molly Hare dug the post holes." And this is supposedly where we get some of the verses to the song. "Old Molly Hare, what you doing there? Digging out a post hole and scratching out your hair." Now, unlike some other tune origin theories I've discussed in previous videos, this one seems to be pretty solid, and most music researchers I've looked up believe they have found the origin of Old Molly Hare in an even older tune from the British Isles. The story of this older tune goes back to the winter of 1802 in the county of Fife on Scotland's eastern coast. It was here where people gathered for one of the most anticipated events of the season. It was called the Fife Hunt Ball. The ball was organized by the Fife Fox Hunting Club, which was an elite club at the time. The ball brought together the region's most prominent families of the area. Men would arrive in their formal evening dress or military uniform. Women wore those flowing gowns of the Regency area, and of course there would be a lot of music and dancing. But the Fife Hunt Ball of 1802 is remembered today mostly because of the piece of music, which was composed to commemorate the occasion. It was composed by this man, the Scottish fiddler-composer Nathaniel Gow. Gow wrote a medley for the ball called the Largo's Fairy Dance, Largo being the parish in Fife where the ball was hosted. Gow seems to have set this melody as an introduction and march for keyboard. It was published on a single sheet way back in 1805. The tune is also known as Fisher Laddie in Northern England, where it appears in a collection of Northern English sword dance tunes by Cecil Sharp. I'll play a section of Old Molly Hare, followed by Largo's Fairy Dance, and see if you can make out the similarity. Well, I always get chills whenever I discover these old tunes that sound so familiar to the ones I've played hundreds of times. I guess that's what they mean when they say music has a life of its own. But it never ceases to amaze me that a tune can outlast so many things in our world, even without the aid of recording devices. And it can cross oceans and continents and still sound so similar, even after all that time. Well, that's all I got on Old Molly Hare. Hope you enjoyed this one, guys. And again, thanks for listening, folks.
Did you tell Old Molly Hare?